Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Seth. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. Three new memorias. I thought I just talked about three new memorias, but they're already releasing more. So yeah, let's talk about them in great detail. We have a new event story, the Onsen event story, and of course, with the new event story comes new memorias. So first, let's talk about the first one on the banner. It is Onsen Nina. She is a light attacker. EX skill costs 14 SP. She raises her own light crit damage and does a AoE light attack. At turn start, if the enemy is at 200% devastation rate, it does plus 50% HP damage. She also gets a normal skill that costs 9 SP, single target attack with big devastation rate. So nothing too crazy. Alright, so being able to raise her own light crit damage by 45% is very good, as it can stack with your general crit buffer. Plus 50% HP damage on the AoE unit is also good. The downside is that she does horrible base damage when not hitting that 200% devastation rate requirement. I find it hard to even break some bosses sometimes when trying to use this Memoria by itself. Trying to even hit the 200% devastation rate is also kind of a pain, since her normal skill isn't AoE, and usually you would only use this Memoria for AoE content anyway. And since you would usually only use this Memoria for AoE content, her SS1 interject skill also doesn't work in her favor, since it is a single target and it's a different element, it's fire. It is also at turn start, they have to be at the 200%. So if you hit the 200% devastation rate on the same turn as Nina uses her skill, it will not apply the plus 50% HP. You will have to wait the turn after, which is pretty dumb in my opinion, but I guess that's just how the skill coding works, I guess. Swimsuit Yuina, who is an AoE attacker, but she's a dark element, also applies a dark crit damage buff to herself and does over 2,000 more base damage at max level. And to hit her plus 50% HP damage requirement, she needs to be in extra turn state. She gets a normal skill that grants her an extra turn to hit that requirement, while also buffing her dark skill damage on the same skill. So compared to this, Nina seems a lot worse because she has a harder requirement to hit. She does less damage, but yes, Yuina is dark element, so let's compare her to a different light AoE damage dealer. The suit Asakura Karen is again the best AoE light DPS in the game. I made a whole video talking about why. I won't repeat myself, just go watch that. However, if you do get Nina and you already have Karen-chan but really want to use Nina, just use them both together and use Karen-chan as the one to do the devastation rate. If you're using a single target buffer, just stack everything on Nina instead. Or if you have an AoE crit buffer, you can double DPS. Karen-chan will instantly hit the 200% threshold for Nina because her devastation rate is ridiculous. Reminder to not use both skills, both EX skills in the same turn, because it has to be a turn start. The enemy has to be at 200% on the start of the turn. So doing this double DPS setup works extremely well with Suit Tojo, who I hope you already have if you have Karen-chan, since they were on the same banner. She puts down a light field, a big one, for 8 turns and gives a crit rate and crit damage buff to the front line. Another buffer that could work well is Pajama Yotsuha, which can give a light crit rate and light crit damage buff to the backline and increases hit count by a small amount. This Memoria is unreleased, however, and is worse than Tojo in this setup because the light crit damage buff will overstack with Nina. But the hit count buff will not overstack with Karen-chan, resulting in a tiny bit of wasted damage potential. However, after extensive testing, I've realized that Suit Karen-chan one-shots the enemy anyway with this setup, so having Nina is kind of worthless. But in Anachrony, it is good to have double damage dealer because they synergize well with each other, and plus the boss's HP pool is so gigantic that most likely Karen-chan cannot one-shot it. But yeah. Overall, Onsen Nina is going to be C tier for me. She's not useless by any means, but her conditions are way too awkward to be consistent. And if you have Suit Karen-chan, just solo carry with her instead. She does ridiculous damage, ridiculous devastation rate. It doesn't even matter if you have another another AoE damage dealer that does plus 50% HP damage when Suit Karen-chan just does so much damage anyway that that plus 50% HP damage doesn't even matter. Okay, let's talk about the next Memoria, which is a kind of a little bit new and a little strange. It is Onsen Isuzu. She has no element. She is a slash debuffer. Her EX skill costs 10 SP. It is AoE and it gives 2 debuffs. It greatly lowers defense and it reduces DP defense. Her normal skill also costs 10 SP and it just confuses the enemy. It's just a bad debuff. Ignore this one. This is one of the only Memorias in the game. I think there's only one other Memoria that does this, that gives a DP defense down debuff. This allows attackers and blasters to just nuke enemies even easier, making breakers even more obsolete than they already are. The DP defense down will also help with enemies with multiple DP gauges. When these enemies come out, they will have like 3 DP gauges that you will have to get through. These enemies, however, cannot be nuked, and the most you can take out is almost 2 full DP gauges in a single attack. You cannot break twice at one time. You can only break one at a time. This means that you will be burning through your buffers' exclusive skills and your debuffers as well. Onsen Isuzu will make it easier so that you can take out all of those DP gauges, meaning you can use less buffs and less debuffs for maximum efficiency. It also only costs 10 SP for a pair of pretty good debuffs, which is extremely cheap. Since she is the only Memoria in the game on EN so far with this debuff, you can use her with a elemental debuffer of your choice depending on your team, or a debuffer who can expose enemy weakness like fragile and other debuffs. The only downside to her is that she only gives 2 debuffs at a time, and Isuzu as a character doesn't have a lot of good debuffs for her normal skills either. But she can be a good fire debuffer if you have the S Memoria for her. Onsen Isuzu is very simple, which is a good thing and also kind of a bad thing. For harder content where devastation rate is key, you won't be able to one-shot the boss no matter how many buffs or debuffs you stack. I'm talking specifically about Anachrones. Once the DP gauge is gone, the DP defense down becomes completely useless, which turns Onsen Isuzu from being able to put 2 debuffs at a time to just 1. Onsen Isuzu to me is B+ tier. She is extremely good for certain content, but she is not all powerful. I think even for the multiple DP gauge content, you can just make use of your breakers. They rarely get any time to shine anyway, so however, there isn't enough general debuffers or good ones in the game. Last but not least, we have base SS1 Mizuhara Aina. She is no element and is a crush debuffer. Her EX skill costs a hefty 15 SP. It charges overdrive gauge by 50% and does single target damage. She also gets a AoE attack for her normal skill. When you get this Memoria, it costs 8 SP. It exposes enemy vulnerabilities, which is the fragile debuff, and it's an AoE fragile debuff. She is a very good overdrive gauge charger. It is 50% of the gauge and a little extra from the attack as long as the enemy is not crush resistant. The cost of her EX skill is kind of fat at 15 SP. If you plan on using her a lot, Limit Break 1 would be a good idea. Since her OD gauge filler is her EX skill, the debuffs she gets are all going to be from her inherited normal skills. This Memoria gives her a AoE fragile at 8 SP. Her S Memoria from the Gacha gives her a 5 SP single target fragile, and her A Memoria gives her a AoE defense down for 6 SP. They all last for 1 turn, so stacking them will be a bit difficult unless you are in overdrive. So in short, you're sacrificing the amount of debuffs you're getting for faster overdrive 3. For score challenges, this is faster clear time for less damage because of less debuffs, which may or may not increase your score depending on how much damage you actually do. Speed may be more important, but if you have a good DPS, then higher damage may increase your score more. Again, it just depends on how much damage you actually do. 15 SP cost is also pretty high. I found through experience that 15 SP is kind of an awkward amount to hit, and it feels bad sometimes when you want to use it, but you're stuck at 14 SP and you gotta wait another turn, especially for a skill like this when you want to use it as fast as possible. I use this Memoria a ton though and found a lot of success, whether it was score challenges or anachronies. She is still very viable. I give her a B tier for now. I think she is still a viable Memoria. Not OP by any means. Interjecting this skill is nice for her other Memorias, but 15 SP is still too much for an interject skill. If she gets an upgrade in the feature that lowers the SP count, it would be an amazing interject skill to have for her. But for now, she is good. Not great or amazing. She's just good. There you have it. Pretty interesting trio of Memorias. I think it's an okay banner to pull on. I don't think Onsen Isuzu is like a game changer, so I don't think you should worry too much about that. Aina is good, but like I said, she's not like crazy, she's not OP, anything like that. So getting Aina is like lower on the priority list. I feel like there's other fantastic Memorias coming. There's also something crazy happening mid-May. I'm not gonna spoil it, but something is coming. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope this review was helpful to you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.